Hi everyone, and welcome to Pro Tools Answers, where three undeniably pliable Pro Tools experts and Avid instructors discuss, demonstrate and elaborate on your Pro Tools questions put to the community in the official Avid's Facebook support forum. I'm your host, Dave Phillips, audio engineer and lecturer for Point Blank in the UK. And on today's show, we are tackling a question from Antonio, who asks this. Hi.
Hello. Hi.
Can someone explain how I can manage the articulations in Pro Tools in a similar way to the expression maps in Cubase? Very interesting question. And here to discuss this interesting one with me, he puts the express in expressive, is Anders Motz from Tonkraftwerk in Austria.
Hello.
And he puts the IV into expressive. Say hi to Andy Hagerman, Avid's audio curriculum manager, and he's in Tokyo. Hi, Andy.
Hello, how you doing?
Before I start, I want to give a shout out to our Patreon supporters who support Pro Tools Answers each month. Many thanks to Don, Mike, Matthew, Gregor, Eric, Kenny and Ben. We are incredibly grateful for your support, and we will continue to be for as long as time continues to turn. If you would like to support our weekly work at Pro Tools Answers, you can head over to patreon.com/Pro Tools Answers, where you can select a manageable tier and lend your support to the show. We would appreciate it more than you would ever know. So, we are discussing expression maps today. So, can anyone give a good, legible explanation as to what expression mapping might be in the context of Pro Tools?
So it basically, and Logic has something like this, and Cubase has something like this. The only DAW that doesn't have something like this really is Pro Tools. But what these are quick buttons that get to what almost all orchestral libraries and many synthesizers that aren't orchestral have, which are called key switches. And key switches are basically pitches outside of the tessitura of an instrument. For example, like, so you've got a violin and its tessitura is here. The keys down here on the left-hand side of the keyboard are unused for violin. And so what happens is any notes that are played down here send a message to the synthesizer saying, don't play what you were playing before, play it as a pizzicato or a spiccato or a marcato or a legato or whatever. And it changes it. The cool thing about what Cubase does and what Logic does with their key maps is they basically allow you to sign these and put them right up, right in front of you so that you can get to them quickly. Because the problem obviously is that if your tessitura is up here and your key switches are down here, it's a scrolling disaster to be able to go up and down with this. But it isn't something that is impossible in Pro Tools. It is something that isn't immediately as convenient in Pro Tools.
No, and what we're going to show today is how we deal with key switches, right? Because it's all it is in Cubase, as you said, it's just a bunch of buttons, and Cubase puts it right up there in front of your face. We're just going to be repurposing a MIDI track basically to be able to literally achieve the same thing, and possibly even go a little bit further, right? And and I think Andy and myself are going to be demonstrating two separate instruments appropriate to what we can afford. and can I start off? Is that okay?
Do it. I actually think you have the better solution.
Okie doke. Well, opinions may vary. So let me do this whole sharey thing with sharing sound. Hopefully that'll work for you guys as well. So what I have is, this is the instrument that my budget allows. I have Native Instruments Session Horns Pro, came with complete. I kind of like it. Does a pretty good job for me. But if we switch over to the main area of the instrument, it shows us the key switches that we have available and the articulations that we have available, and the notes that trigger those particular articulations. And Andy was saying they're way down in the register. So we're talking way down C. Is that -1? Would that be? I don't think it kind of works out that. Yes, C -1 to G sharp -1, way out of the range. Did you use the word tessitura?
Tessitura.
Tessitura.
Tessitura is the playable range of an instrument. Whoa. So, for example, with a saxophone, you've got that. That's alto. With the alto sax, its tessitura is relatively high, so the key switches are going to be low. However, with like something like a contrabass, the key switches are above the tessitura. They're up on the other side because it's outside of the playable range of the instrument.
Oh, we learn something new every day. That's why we love having you here. So we've got 9 key switches here, triggered by C-1 up to G#-1. And as we were saying in Cubase, there'll be a specific map that you can press specific buttons, and it's connected to the track. But we have to do something a little bit different in Pro Tools. Now, a simple way, arguably not the great way to do it, is you can program those onto the main range of or the main MIDI track for your instrument, but it's arguably not the best way to do it, because Andy was saying that it's so far. The ranges are so far away from each other that it becomes a scrolling nightmare. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a separate MIDI track. So I've got the instrument tracks hosting my contact, and it's got 3 different tracks for my brass section. I could host them on one auxiliary, but I wanted these to be bounced onto separate tracks, so it helps to have it this way. And I'm going to create a MIDI track, as I've got down here, and that MIDI track, if we show the I/O assignments, these are sending the MIDI data from the MIDI tracks to the specific instruments that are hosted up here on our instrument tracks. One of the wonderful things I love about Pro Tools is how easy patching things around is, right? I think some of the other doors kind of hide this away from us, but patching is really, really simple in Pro Tools. So just select the specific instrument and the specific channel that the instrument track is working on, and we've got 2 tracks then sending MIDI data to our instrument. So if I just open up Contact again, and I'll move this over, wonderful real estate that we have. Let's just shift that a little bit to give a bit more space. In fact, I can make the instrument just a little smaller. Get you guys out of the way.
When you make the instrument smaller, does the pitch go up?
Not in this case, no. So if we watch this little area here, this is showing the articulation that that Contact is playing back at a particular time. And if I've got each of the key switches programmed in on separate MIDI clips right here. So if I just highlight a clip and then press play, we can see that it then shifts the articulation. And if I do the same thing here, it's switching the articulation to vibrato, switching to the crescendo, switching to grace notes. And that's essentially all that it is. It's just MIDI notes or MIDI events. I'm going to just consider them MIDI events, that when the Pro Tools playhead experiences those MIDI events, it sends that MIDI data up to the MIDI instrument and it changes the articulation for us. Now, the way that I've got this set up to be a little bit more like the tempo, the expression map that Cubase has got built in, I've got my articulations programmed into a MIDI track on here, but I've just consolidated them so that they're easier to manage, because this whole thing is done, so I don't need any more editing to happen. But what I've done is, if I just get rid of all, actually no, I don't need to get rid of all of those, but what I can do is I've named each of my clips appropriate to the articulation that the note contained within these clips will do. So if I want to change my instrument to play back grace notes, I'll just grab the grace note key switch note and I'll drag that onto my timeline. And let's say that's a growl note there, and I want that to be a non-vibrato note there. I'll drag them onto the timeline, and whether I'm working in slip or grid mode will determine how easy these things are to move on. I've just created my clips with the notes right at the beginning of the bar. I think arguably you'd probably want the notes to the key switches to change slightly before the notes would play back. So
right,
whether you're working in slip or grid mode, you can always, if you're working in grid mode, you can just hold down command and just slip your notes around. It's nice and easy.
Now, I think this is a general rule for pretty much everybody, but the key switch a key switch will maintain what it is until another key switch message is given.
Exactly.
So all you need to do, it doesn't. So in other words, if you want something to be a certain articulation, you don't have to stretch that key switch out for the entire articulation. You just have to have it happen before you want that articulation to come in.
Yeah,
that's it.
Exactly. And if I'll play this passage, and you can hear that, right? Let me just open the instrument up, and we can watch the key switches update as my brass plays back. And Andy, try not to laugh, because I know your Swam instrument is particularly nice. So here we go.
I don't make any judgment.
So let's just watch that little area update as the part plays. So let's switch to growl. There we go. So it's a very simple section. We can see the grace notes updating. As I said, I just consolidated all of my key switches into one clip so that it's just a bit easier to manage and a bit easier to archive. And obviously, I don't need to make any further changes from there. So,
Dave, I'm so impressed by this. I've been doing key switches just in the same MIDI clip as I'm actually playing my notes. And as Andy has pointed out already, it's scrolling nightmare. I have to scroll down to the key switches, and so this is so much better.
Yeah.
Well, there's two levels of hell, right? First of all is the scrolling. The second of all is you have to really dig sometimes to find out what note is what key switch.
Yeah.
And the amount of times I've had to go back and back and back to the manual to find out what is the key switch for that articulation. But what I like about what Dave's done, and what I've done in a different workflow that does the same thing, is that he's got all of his articulations named in the clips list.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And what he can do is saves this. If you save this as a session or as even as a track preset or as a session template, you choose save media. That goes along with it, and it's just MIDI, so it's really, really tiny. So there's so much good workflow in that.
Let's do that. So let's save that as a track preset, and we'll call it what should we call it? It's Session Horns Pro, isn't it? Session Horns Pro key switches, and we'll include the media and the MIDI clips. Edits in the let's make a selection, because I really
you want to do that, because if not, it'll do all of it.
Yeah, I really do only want to save those. So save track preset, include MIDI clips in the collection only, Session Horns Pro key switches.
But you could also include the other instruments, like the trumpets and the trombones and everything, or are those the exact same key switches?
They're exactly the same key switches.
Oh,
it's the same
fantastic.
instrument. It's the same instrument.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
and obviously they're all playing together. So you could even make the key switch for one track and then just copy them over to the subsequent tracks. So they're all working together. And the trombone has a couple of different ones on different tracks, but. Hey.
And different manufacturers deal with key switches in radically different ways. So what he's done here is absolutely fantastic.
How does that work, like in Logic and Cubase? Does it map to the manufacturers? Because I mean, you had 9 key switches there, but how many key switches do you have as a preset in Cubase, and how does it map that?
So this is one of the great things about what Cubase and Logic do, is that the feature is built into the DAW, and the virtual instruments are compatible with that feature. So it'll just suck the key switches into these row of, I think it's 5 in Cubase, 5 articulations.
Okay,
it's been a while, but so it'll automatically populate. So it does all the work for you, which is great. It's fantastic. Don't get me wrong. It's definitely better than what we have. But what we have here is, if you spend just a little bit of time, you're not limited to 5, and you don't have to go back to the plugin to be able to use it. Right? You can just drag stuff in. Now, the only thing I do different than what Dave did, and this is a matter of complete personal preference, is I would create a routing folder and it would have a one MIDI track in there for my regular MIDI, and it would have another MIDI track in there for just as key switches, so that you could just fold it right up, and it's all a self-contained thing. But there's nothing wrong with what Dave's done. It's absolutely brilliant.
Fantastic. I'm going to start doing this. I need to sit down and like just prepare my key switches for different instruments that I use all the time.
Yeah. And just save them as a track preset and then recall them.
Exactly.
And it'll drag the MIDI clips into the clips list.
Because this is something you set up once, and then you can just reuse that track preset.
Yeah. And it's named descriptively, right? So let me, Dave, just it does exactly the same thing. It just does it in a different way. Can I show you my screen?
Do it.
So let's see here, and doink. Okay, so I've got a solo violin here, and this, because Dave wanted to show the keyboard, this is using Opus. Now, this is a routing folder. So this is it's basically the same as an aux track at this point. And here's Opus, which is East West's virtual instrument. And if I go to the player, doink, there we go. Come on. There we go. So you'll see this is the tessitura. Okay, and so this is the playable range of the instrument, and then way out here are the key switch keys. Now, if I was playing this live, if I played those keys, and then I could use, I could hit those keys and it would change that. And a lot of people do that in real time, which is to me a skill that I have not mastered. And you can assign. So if I wanted to take a look at the key switches, I could do here to articulations, and here are the assignments, and I can customize this and do whatever I want to. But this is a really a nice way of working it. Now, once I've got this, go ahead.
Something just popped into my mind. For the people that can program the key switches as they're playing the instrument, can we record the key switches onto a separate MIDI track and the instrument part onto a separate MIDI track?
Let me tell you how I do it. I have done that in the past, and I have one instrument that I'm playing the melody on, and I have a different instrument. So there are some, because you want it. Unfortunately, most instruments, most keyboards are outputting on one channel only.
Yeah.
Right.
I was wondering if there was a way of filtering out specific note ranges for different tracks.
You could split it afterwards very easily.
You can split it afterwards. It's not the end of the world, but it's a little bit of a kludge, right? And the easiest way I've done.
Yeah, exactly what you said. Like using two keyboards, it's just genius.
So okay, not that I want to be a salesman or anything like this, but you guys have seen this before. So this is my Sensel Morph, which is a fantastic MIDI controller, and it has a lot of overlays that allow you to do things. And the one that I use for that kind of work is this guy right here. And basically, I have these assigned to the different key switches, and I just attach this, have it over on my left hand side, and I can be playing the melody on here, and I can be changing articulations over there on the second instrument. I do it often? No, I just don't have that kind of coordination. So let me show you what I did, and I think Dave has done it better, to be quite honest. So let me open this up. So here is a routing folder. I've got the instrument, up here in the top, which is basically the same thing as an aux track. I have the MIDI over here, and I'll go ahead and I'll mute the other track. So, and what I have here are additional MIDI tracks. And what makes this work to me, or did until I saw what Dave was doing, is I have individual tracks, and the height is set to something that a lot of people don't realize exists. It's a thing called single note. So if you go over here, and you can change the height, like everybody's done it. So there's micro, mini, all this stuff. You'll see down here there's a thing called single note, which a lot of people don't touch. This one I've set to a single note height of 0, which is the key, the pitch for sostenuto. So now if I go over here to legato, and I just throw on a note over here, then if I start to play, right, so that's playing. And then if I go over here to pizzicato, which if it has a single note height of E flat 0,
which is the key switch for the pizzicato,
which is the key switch for the pizzicato. Okay.
cheeky.
Again, it's just two different ways of doing the same thing. But it gets to it. Basically, it's the same kind of thing. I like having all the associated stuff in one track so that I can open it and close it the same way. But that's completely a matter of personal opinion, and that's it. And the other thing that is kind of cool here is that you can see where different articulations are happening, because essentially this clip is just this note. That's all it can be. And this clip is just that note. So it does give you a sense of when articulations are changing up here, but then so would Dave's.
Yeah, but what I like with this is there is no copy pasting with this. It's just drawing in wherever, whenever you like. There is no copy pasting.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily even need to change from a tool either. You can just hold. Is it command and it just switches to the pencil tool?
Yeah, just even if you click on a track that has clips, if you click on it, it'll change the notes view. Assuming that that's what you want to do. Here's this may be the first time folks have seen this on this show, but this is a great little instrument called Swam. This is a physical model trumpet. A little Danny boy for you. Okay, now let's say I wanted to put a doit in there. Now doit is our articulation goes boink. This is what it sounds like. So if I put a doit in here, which is going to basically do something unthinkable to this lovely tune. Oh, it was too late. Yeah, it's too fast. It doesn't even make any sense in there. It's going up, but it's.
You were trying to do it on the long note, right? Nope.
Yeah, I was trying to do it on the long note. Hold on a second. Let's see. Go here. There you go. That's a
nice.
That's a doit right there for you.
I didn't know that there was a musical word called a doit.
A doit, yeah, it's called a doit. Because brass players are very simple creatures. What does it sound like? I don't know. Doit? What do you want to call it? I don't know. Let's call it a doit.
Onomatopoetic.
Yes, it is. It is very well said. Yeah. So and basically, this is the same kind of thing. And so you can put in as many things as you want to. And the thing that you want to do here, which starts to get to where Cubase and Logic are now, is it gives you a menu of the different articulations by name. You have to set it up manually, but could I take this folder track and could I make a track preset out of it? Yes, I could, right? And I would, right? And that allows me to pull it right back in, and I'm right back here not only with the automatic articulations that the feature pulls in, but my custom settings for whatever it is that I want to do.
Love that. Excellent.
And all it takes to replicate it is, as you said, just a little bit of time. Either the two workflows. It took me about 10 minutes, I think, to set up each of the different notes. I put key S at the beginning of each of my clips, purely because of the way that the clips list organizes. Although if you just call them Grace or Growl or Rip, they're different areas of the alphabet, and the clips list sorts alphabetically, so it can be a nightmare to find. But if you put them all in,
well, and different instruments, a growl, for example, on different instruments could be a different pitch. So you put the instrument and then you put the key switch. I think it's brilliant. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Here's the thing, though, if you can forgive me for a little of opinion. A lot of people will look at the expression mapping, and they'll say, that's better. I'm just going to do all my MIDI inside of Cubase and then put it into Pro Tools for mixing. You give up so much by doing your MIDI stuff and then bouncing to audio and then only bringing it into Pro Tools for mixing. First of all, you've truncated the file down to 24 bits, so the dynamic range and all that goodness of 32-bit floating point is gone once you make an audio file of it. But also, let's say you wanted to change a note, or heaven forbid, change the key. You have to then go back to your other DAW and then rebounce it and then bring it back in. And I tell you what, I'll spend a little bit extra prep time in order to keep my MIDI in the same DAW as my audio so that they're side by side. I have all the flexibility in the world. I can line things up. I can move things around non-destructively. I don't have to fuss around with it. And I think, Dave, I think your workflow works great. I think mine works okay as well. And that's how you basically can build the feature that you want. And again, you have to do it yourself.
I love your single note view, because to me, if rather than just, as Anders said, just clicking and dragging and copying and pasting, and obviously you can hold down Alt and drag the notes around, the key switches around that way, but your way is just hold down Command and then right where you want the key switch to be on the particular key switch. Wonderful way to go as well. Big single note view is also fantastic for drums.
Drums, yeah, exactly.
Totally. Yeah, because you can have your routing folder at the top, and then you have just all those things individual by track. You can put, by the way, you can put MIDI real-time properties on each individual track, so you can delay the snare without affecting other things. It's really great. It's fantastic. Folder tracks makes it that much easier.
Going one step further, how could we combine, if we got our key switches on separate tracks as per your workflow, how could we then combine them into one master MIDI clip for say archiving, if you wanted to do that? Or would you keep them all separate?
Well, you can always do merge paste, but that's kind of a slow way to do it. MIDI can consolidate, but it doesn't consolidate. It doesn't consolidate multiple tracks into a single. You could select all the tracks and export them as a standard MIDI clip and then re-import it. That doesn't seem like there's no real reason that you have to, though. No. I mean, as long as you keep it in there the way it is, like you said, Pro Tools has had a very easy way of assigning inputs and outputs, and that hasn't changed in decades, and it doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon. So I would say that there's nothing in there that screams obsolescence.
But maybe we need to cut this out because I haven't really thought this through. But
now we know we're keeping it.
Okay, I'm keeping my mouth shut. I'm not saying anything.
This always works out really well for you, Anders.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I get hate mail all the time.
Do you really? You don't get hate mail.
No, I don't. No, people stand up for me. Thank you, by the way, for everyone. Thank you. No, but I mean, if
I know I asked the question, but I can't think of one either, because you just stick it all in a folder track, fold it down. It's the MIDI is only kilobytes anyway. The folder track will keep it all organized.
And if you open up in a session that doesn't support folder tracks, it keeps the track, it just loses the folder, changes the folder into an aux track, and maintains the routing. So you lose nothing.
What if you select those tracks with the key switches and press C, and then paste them into the original MIDI track?
Well, that's where MIDI merge pasting would come in, I think. Hold on a second.
But that would paste with merge.
But it does seem like a whole bunch of effort for not a lot of return.
No, but seriously, can you just select those key switch tracks and just copy them and then go up into the single melody and just paste it, having MIDI merge on, of course?
Yeah, but I'll be honest, I wouldn't want to put it into the main.
But if that was the question.
Hold on a second.
No, it was just the question was just, is there an expression map? Although I'm thinking if you once you've made a performance with the MIDI and the key switches, they become part of the performance. So if you did combine them into the original performance track, it just becomes the performance track then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Do you know? Let's wind it up there. I think we've gone kind of round and round in an interesting, I think, an interesting way. This was a really interesting kind of investigation as to what we could do. But anyway, so creating expression maps in Pro Tools. We don't have a specific expression map track, but we've shown that we have an expression map track if we create one. Yep. And basically repurpose a MIDI tool, because that's all that the expression map track would be, isn't it? It's just a MIDI controller.
That's all it is, yep.
And we love our MIDI at Pro Tools Answers.
We certainly do.
definitely at Dave's end of Pro Tools Answers as well. Big fan. So hopefully that was an interesting one. If you've enjoyed what we were doing today, give our video a like. If you fancy following us on YouTube, you can hit subscribe on the channel as well. We are collecting subscribers. We have been for the last year, so you can join our collection if you wish. Hit the bell icon so you get notified of the videos that we release on a weekly schedule. And if you fancy heading over to protoolsanswers.com, you can subscribe over there. And Andy writes to you every week as a result of that, giving you a little bit of an update of what's going on. And you can also pick up some Pro Tools Answers swag over at protoolsanswers.com as well. If you fancy taking that next step in our relationship, you can head over to patreon.com /Pro Tools Answers and maybe consider donating to the channel over there. As we said at the head of the video, we do appreciate it incredibly. And hopefully you've got this far in the video to hear that.
And if you did, thank you.
Yeah. If you did, well done. You're exactly our kind of people.
There you go.
So all this me to say is thank you very much to Anders.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Andy.
You bet.
My name's Dave. Make sure you join us for the next episode. The next episode is a very, very, very special one. My name's Dave. This is Pro Tools Answers, and we're out.